Hello and welcome. This is Braemar, and today we're going to be playing something a little bit different. World War III Conflict of Nations, which is now available on your mobile phone. But the first thing you're going to notice is that this screen looks a little bit different. I'm playing on the computer, you might be playing on the mobile phone, but you can do both. Just go to Conflict of Nations website, go to the game page, log in, register using your credentials, and now you can start multiple games. You're welcome. Today, we're going to talk about a simple breakdown of how to basics. The short of it is, we're going to look at how to use your resources to win the game. But first, we should talk about winning the game. To win the game, you must reach a threshold of 1500 victory points. Currently in the Flashpoint game, I'm barely at 176. This game's been going on for like 8.5 days. The other thing you have to know is like when you're kind of getting into some of these games, you can select two different types of games. You can play a normal speed game, which is this, or you can play a 4 times speed game, which is much faster. So how do we get past this 1500 point victory threshold? The first thing you're going to notice sitting around the country are units, whether basic infantry, air superiority units, ships, it doesn't matter. All of them can be selected. In the mobile game, you'll just be clicking on the unit and the information will pop up in the bottom of the screen. On the left part of it will be the health, and on the right part will be a little eye. You can click on the little eye to give you a more detailed explanation. Here, you just click on the unit that you have selected, and then you click the unit itself. And this information is very important, but we're not going to look at that for right now. What's most important is their current information on the bottom part of the screen on the left-hand side. What you're going to see is their health, what it currently is, and what it can be. You will also see how many units are there, and then we'll get more into the more detailed information. But the most important thing you need to know about units is this is what's going to win the game. Your units do everything in the game that's interactive. You want to be moving these around and strategically positioning these things to obtain your goal. Whether you're ready to launch a sneak attack on Russia or you're defending from Croatia, you want to set up your units for success. First thing you need to know, and it's very important, your units do not heal themselves unless you use the gold pay option, which they will give you a little bit of gold to sign up. Don't go ahead and throw it into this because healing is easy to obtain and you don't need to do it. You just move them to a city or a province that has a field hospital in it, and they will start healing over time. It's going to take a little bit of time because a field hospital only heals 1 health per day, and a city heals for 1 health per day, and then a hospital in a city will add in 1 extra health, so they'll heal for 2 hit points per day, which is important because we're literally talking about 4 to 7 days to heal up your units back to full health once they've been placed into a city. Like I said, you will see their health in the bottom left-hand screen. This guy will take over 15 days to heal, which is devastating. We're just going to talk about units for a second. What do you need to know about these units, and what are we going to be using to make these units operate? First thing you're probably going to know is their combat ability. You're going to select this guy, and we're actually going to go back into that more detailed view. Combat properties. Um, I'm also going to tell you this is where you're going to find the information about their upkeep. What it's going to cost per day to keep this unit operational. Will be right here. These resources: manpower, gas, money, and resources. Now, here is their attack and defense rating. Um, their initial stats are not too important. I mean, they are a little bit better on defense, but it's more important in the late game to know where this stuff is located, their movement speed, and all that kind of information. Um, that's sort of the short of it. I mean, you can get into more explanations. Oh, that's probably very loud. This guy can have an attack range, he has radar range, how he fights against helicopters, how he defends against helicopters. These things get a little bit more detailed. But that's all you need to know for right now. The first big question I see is how do I make more gosh darn units? Where do they come from? Where do they go? Where do they come from, Cotton Eye Joe? On your first game, they give you a little bit of gold and they show you what to do, how to build a unit, and how to speed it up. They tell you where to click to spend money and then, buy more stuff. That's great, right? But how do you make more units moving forward? Like, how do I, build up an army? I'm going to go into detail on how this is actually completed. Haste makes waste, but before you start making more, let's talk about resources. You need a certain amount of resources to build a unit, you need a certain amount of resources to maintain that unit, and you need a certain amount of resources to research new weapons and technology for that unit. We will get these resources slowly. You can normally see them. The symbols are normally pretty large on the mobile game. You have to zoom into them here on the desktop. But you get those resources slowly over time from those locations on the map that have these symbols. The next thing you need to do is build buildings. That's how you will make units. How are you building these buildings, you might ask? More resources is the answer. Clicking on a city will bring up what is available in the city to build. So here we have construction and mobilization. In the mobile game, it'll be much easier for you to see. They will pop up as build and mobilize. And you click build, and it brings you up to a menu that has different buildings on here. You're typically going to need a army base, a recruiting office, and an arms dealer, and you'll have to level up these bases for higher level infantry. To do that, you actually will just click start. It'll light up blue on the mobile game. And to make another extra level, you just click it again. It'll be army base level 2, or it'll just have a big 2 or 3 on the symbol there next to the army base. So I know you're all asking, what I want to do is build units. But to build units, you must build buildings, or already have those buildings in place, which is kind of rare. So once we have the resources available, once we have buildings available, we click on the unit we currently have researched, and it starts mobilizing the unit like this. You come here, you see unit, you have resources for unit, boom, research unit, units being researched. That's awesome. You're ready to go. You're making units. The problem is if you're playing on a regular game, time speed is is really something you should take in consideration because it almost takes a day to mobilize these units. It actually almost takes about a day to build about anything. I'm sure higher up buildings are going to take longer than a day. But I've only seen a couple of days, if that, for some of the, level 2, level 3 stuff. So while we're talking about it, I think it's important to talk about some of these metrics. Let's just say that we go here to Kaliningrad, and you're like, all right, I got units in Kaliningrad, but oh my gosh, a local insurgents just broke out in Warsaw, like it did over here. And I need to I need to move some units there. I need to grab this army. I need to move it over there. These armies will take forever to move. They could take 4 hours from Kaliningrad to Warsaw, actually about 4.5. And what's interesting is when you go to like Google Maps and you type that in, that's the actual distance it takes and the time it takes, 4.5 hours to get there by truck. So when you give these guys orders, you're giving them an actual order to like start moving across the country. And even getting on and departing planes and starting these flights in these connecting areas, they have to board. You have to give them time to board and depart, and it typically takes 30 to 45 minutes to depart the plane. Nothing moves fast in the game, and you have to think ahead strategically and set yourself up for success. This game is all about being proactive and being ahead of the ball, 2 steps ahead of your enemy. Now that we figured out units and you figured out how to win, almost, now on to the biggest question, how do I move units? This can be broken down into 2 different areas. There are some nuances to them, but it's not that difficult. First, you're going to want to select the units that you want to click to move or attack. In the mobile game, you won't see the split button, but it is very important because it's the other thing that you need to know about moving. If you want to split this unit up, you will slide the units that you want to split. You will click move or attack and then click where you want to move or attack. They can be split to take out, large different areas. Like if you want to split up a large army to take out a massive area here, it's a great idea to sort of like blanket take over units or blanket take over provinces that aren't defended. It'd be very difficult if they were defended. Splitting up a stack is very useful when you're trying to take over a large amount of area, but you have to know that it'll weaken your charge because they can take out a smaller unit much easily than a large stack. So if your stack is broken, they can easily be destroyed by a counterattack. Even spicier is that we can select a unit and we can actually tell him to rush. Now, this won't actually pop up in the game unless you go in your mobile device to attack more, and then the little yellow rush button will be available. And they don't tell you that it increases the speed by 50%, but at a penalty of 5% total hit points per hour. Um, that's really spicy stuff. If you need to move somebody really fast and you're okay with losing a little bit of health, you can go ahead and do that. Even more so spicier though is retreating. Let's say you get your units here, they start attacking, they start losing. There's going to be a retreat button that pops up when you select the unit. You can then tell them to retreat to an area and they will back off that fight. You will save the unit, but it'll cost you a large portion of their health, probably about 10 to 15%. So know that telling them to retreat will cost them a large chunk of health, but you'll save the unit. It will not be able to go to a different position until it leaves the combat area. Once it's left the combat area, then you can give it directions to move to a healing point or a defensive area. And then, of course, if they get down close to zero, they can just be overran and dying. So everything's looking good. We know what units are, we know how to make those units, and we know how to move those units around. But we only kind of know about cities and buildings. So let's talk about this with some more detail. We're going to go and look at Odessa. Odessa has an army base, an air base, a recruiting office, and a harbor. It's a level 2 army base. If we want to construct more, we're going to come to the construction tab. Once again, you can click this building to see what these resources are and what resources you need. Your resources will be up here. We've already talked about how they slowly build up over time. You can see more information if you play online, but in the mobile game, it just kind of has some numbers up there, and you're wondering like, oh, how quickly? It takes forever. 115 an hour is actually pretty good, but still, that's terrible. I currently have the level 2 army base, which will allow me access to build basic mechanized infantry. You also need a recruiting office, but how do you actually know what you need to build a unit? I think the best way to look at that is the research tab. The research tab will be available on the top part of your screen in the mobile device. Here it is located on the left. Actually, the things that are located there also located here if you want to go into chat and coalitions and stuff like that. I currently have my own coalition, but that nobody else wants to join me. Poor little Ukraine over here. Look at this research tab. There are way too many things that you can click on in here. I mean, it is just absolutely filled with researches that you can do. What do you prioritize? So you're going to select a research and it'll tell you what it costs. On the mobile game, it'll be, again, probably near the bottom left-hand screen. You can see how long it'll take, basically a whole day, and then what research it'll require. But what does it actually take to build this unit? In the mobile game, just select the unit that you want to see and it'll pop up the information. On the website, you have to click the eye down here, but as you come down in the mobile game, there will be a checkbox with requirements for building that unit. This will require an army base level 2, a naval base level 2, and a recruiting office level 1, a research of basic marines level 1. So not only do you have to research this under the research tab, you have to have the buildings built in a place and the resources available to build that person. So go ahead. If you got the technologies, the resources, and the buildings in place, start making units. Once those units are made, you want to select them and move them to a larger stack or move them together in the same place, and they will just make a stack. You can split that stack up, but I think, together as a whole, they're much stronger. So now I'll be honest, we need to talk. I feel like you know how to get resources, you know how to move your units, you know how to make those units. So when does this all get complicated, right? Well, this is the complicated section. You need to start producing the right units for the job. Towed artillery, anti-aircraft guns, and many other units make it possible, even for smaller countries, to strategically defend and win against larger countries. Most early game stats are more geared towards defense. It takes an overwhelming number of attackers to beat out a smaller unit who is defending. Using airstrikes and artillery is the best way to knock down units in cities before you invade with units like infantry and tank. To know what units you need to know your country, your allies, and the people surrounding you. Important factors are terrain and how you want to move forward with attacking and defending. I know the first part of the game can look very daunting, but if you don't get the initial setup right, you won't even get to the second part, which is the strategy, which is the most fun. You have to manage your resources and defend before you can build up and attack. So I'm sure you've started a new game, you've looked around, you see what you've had, and you see what you don't have, and you're lacking, and probably in some resources. Probably almost all resources, because initial starting for most countries is garbage. And then you're going to start looking at your resources of your neighbor, and you'll be like, wow, I really want some of those gasoline and supplies. Those look good. You look really weak. I think I want to take you out. But then you look over here at Russia, and you're like, oh, Russia, I would really like your technology and your supplies, but you look very strong. So obviously, you want to ally some other people before you ally of others. But this is an important indicator of what units you need to build, because you can actually tell what cities you need to attack and what they're building around those cities. You can actually do recon, see that they have combat outposts, and see how you want to approach the attack, and that'll tell you what units to build if you want to blitz them, if you want to build up artillery, if you want to build up strike forces. How do you want to do this? Who can you ally that'll best help you gain those goals and get those resources so you can maintain and get these victory points? The game is incredibly fun, and in the next video, I want to be playing on a 4 times speed to give you more of a hands-on explanation on how to operate your country. This is on a regular speed. I've been playing as Ukraine. It's been going on for 8.5 days. I don't really see an end to this, so it might be a little while before this game is over. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll answer them to the best of my knowledge or ask someone who does know. I hope to see you again in the next video for a more action-packed 4 times speed game. Have a great day.